Hey everyone, this is Nick, and apparently I'm lazy, because I just display scrolling web pages instead of recording something specific for each news article. That's something I could absolutely do if I hired someone, but I can't, because I don't have 1 million subs and 200,000 views per video. And so here is your weekly laziness in the form of Linux and open source news. This time we have Thunderbird getting one of its biggest updates ever. We have Google getting hit by yet another antitrust complaint in the EU, and we have GNOME Web, also called Epiphany, getting support for web extensions. And of course, we have a ton of updates to GNOME, KDE, Plasma Mobile, the Steam Deck, and a lot more. So let's get started. Just like you can get started with your own Linux or gaming server thanks to today's sponsor and the $100 free credit they're giving you. Thanks to Linode for sponsoring this video. Linode is the best choice to deploy your own Linux or gaming server. Getting started is extremely easy thanks to their app marketplace. You can just pick from one of the many apps they offer, select a few configuration options, and just one-click deploy that server. It's super simple. It works for a development environment, but also for a Minecraft or Valheim server. Among the most notable apps, Linode has Moodle to create your own learning management system and teach and sell courses in minutes, but they also have stuff like Pi-hole to block ads. You can block mine, but it's gonna make me even poorer. From Focalboard, a Trello alternative to Rocket Chat, which is the equivalent to Slack or Teams, Linode has everything you would want. Click the link in the description to get your $100 credit and get started. Thunderbird 1.02 was released in what's probably the biggest update to the email client. It brings a revamped inbox and folder list with colored folders for a more modern look, as well as a new address book with a completely redesigned contact presentation and a bunch of new information fields. It's also compatible with the vCard standard, and you can initiate a new email or event right from the contact page. Thunderbird also gets a new Spaces toolbar, letting you switch to and from the various features: mail, address book, calendar, tasks, chats, and your add-ons, as well as the settings. And that Spaces bar can even be customized with various colors so it looks exactly how you want. There's also a new import-export wizard with a guided experience to let you get all your data in or out of the program, from Outlook, SeaMonkey, or another Thunderbird installation. Emails have a redesigned message header as well that you can configure to display the information that's most important to you, and it can be used to star messages or convert them into a calendar event or task. Finally, Thunderbird 1.02 integrates Matrix Chat out of the box, so you have a one-stop shop for all your instant messaging needs. With that new release, what they have planned for the future, and the future release of Thunderbird for Android with sync capabilities between the two, I can definitely say that Thunderbird is looking on a great path. I will definitely try it again, and maybe I'll just go back to using it daily as my email client. AMD published the source code to their upscaling, super sampling tool, FidelityFX Super Resolution 2, also known as FSR2. It's under the MIT license, so it can be reused in almost every way possible. It's the successor to the first release of FSR, supporting Vulkan and DirectX 12, and is fully supported on Linux, on top of being available on different GPUs, not just the ones AMD makes. If you're unfamiliar with what this does, it lets you render a game at a lower resolution and uses algorithms to reconstruct your screen's native resolution with anti-aliasing added, which results in the ability to play with much better performance at very little cost in image quality. FSR2 replaces the game's native anti-aliasing with higher quality solutions. It improves on image quality compared to FSR1 and supports dynamic resolution scaling, so the game can adjust the resolution to stick to a specific frame rate. The Steam Deck already implements FSR1 natively in its window manager, and I would love to see them implementing FSR2 as well. These super sampling tools are really awesome. They let me play some AAA titles on the Steam Deck that this device has no right to be able to run with acceptable frame rates and high level of quality. It's really good. It looks like the Linux kernel should get Rust support for the 5.20 release, so not in the next release planned for the end of July. The kernel developers are laying down the infrastructure to enable Rust code and a few sample drivers to guide new contributions. The support will be optional when building the kernel, so you can build it without Rust or enable certain features that use Rust. 5.20 will also bring performance improvements, the usual improved hardware support, especially for AMD devices, and the RDNA 3 architecture, and the addition of Rust support might mean more contributions for drivers as well. So I guess it's all good news. Of course, nothing has been merged yet, so things can still change before 5.20 releases. Now, I'm not a developer and I am not savvy enough to know what Rust brings or doesn't bring for drivers or for a kernel, but I guess supporting more languages might be good to get more people involved, I guess. KDE developers are still keeping up with their weekly updates, and this week was mainly focused on bug fixing. 4 15-minute bugs have been fixed, bringing the total under 60. As a reminder, these are bugs you can encounter in your first 15 minutes with KDE, and that can really detract from your first impressions of the desktop. There are also some improvements, of course, like KDE letting you disable middle click to paste in Wayland, Discover now following your priority for Flatpak repos by using the same one as the command line Flatpak tool, the new letter grid in the kickoff menu that lets you navigate to a certain letter in your list of apps now gets a nice animation, Kirigami apps get some fixes for their sidebar, Plasma now updates icons within 1 second instead of 10 when they change on disk, the battery widget now shows the battery level for wireless touchpads, the Open With dialog now lets you find apps in Discover, and there were a ton of bug fixes, most of which should make their way to you in future bug fix updates to the current Plasma releases. As always, KDE Plasma seems to have a tick-tock rhythm for updates. No, not that kind of tick-tock. The tick-tock like in a clock, like you get one feature update and then one bug fix update. And that's good. Plasma Mobile also got some love with the release of the Plasma Mobile Gear compilation, version 22.06. The task switcher now sorts by last app open instead of alphabetically. The action drawer, this little quick settings panel that you can drag from the top, can now display pages like on Android, so you can get more toggles in one place. The quick settings can also be pulled entirely by dragging from a screen corner. The navigation bar now emits vibrations when tapped, which can be customized, and there's a swipe left and right gesture on that bar to quickly switch between open applications. Shadows on buttons and controls are now re-enabled, as the team fixed performance issues that prevented them from being usable on lower-end devices. Various apps also received updates like AudioTube, the YouTube Music client, Casts, the podcast client, or Tocodon, the Mastodon client. And I think it's high time I did another deep dive into the various Linux mobile, let's say desktop, mobile interfaces, because it's been a while and they seem to have evolved quite nicely. GNOME developers were also hard at work on their core libraries and applications. Files gets a new list view, redeveloped almost from the ground up, with new features like rubber band selection, empty spaces between items to make it easier to use the context menu, highlighting rows on hover, file names being ellipsed in the middle to be more readable, the ability to change sorting order, with that order being shared with the grid view, and more. It's still a work in progress, but it should make that list view a lot more usable. Calendar gets a pinch gesture for the week views to compact and expand the hour range you can see on screen, and you can also use it by holding Control and scrolling. Calendar's events also look nicer, more in keeping with the latest GNOME design trends. Pika Backup got an update to fix issues with scheduled backups. Login Manager fixes a bunch of distro-specific bugs and added new translations. And Lock Screen Message has been released as a GNOME extension for GNOME 42. Finally, Shell Configuration, another GNOME extension that lets you configure GNOME Shell in details, now also supports GNOME 42 and 41 and has more configuration options. Nothing that makes me super excited this week. I like the work that they're doing to make apps more responsive, more touch-friendly, but seeing as we still lack a flagship phone to run, for example, Phosh or the future GNOME Mobile Shell, it's hard to get super excited for me. Krita 5.1 looks like it's going to be a very good release for users of the digital painting tool. The team has added operations for multiple layers, so you can copy, cut, paste, and clear selections from multiple layers at once, and layers are easier to manage in the layer Docker. They also added a ton of new formats like WebP, Photoshop layered TIFFs, OpenEXR 2.3 and 3, JPEG XL, PSD fill layers and color labels, and the ASC and ACB color palettes, used mainly by Adobe's application. Krita will also be better at retrieving images from the clipboard. Touch gestures are now configurable, there are new fill tools like Continuous Fill and Enclose and Fill, and you can drag and drop swatches onto the canvas to autofill parts of the image. There are also a ton of fixes and improvements to brushes, the UI, the implementation of the Gmic plugin, and more. I started dabbling with Krita on my Android tablet, and I must say it's a very nice tool to use. Now, with daily work and maybe a little bit more improvement on my part, maybe I'll be able to produce something that's okay. More okay than this, at least. EndlessOS, a Linux distribution aiming at the education market, posted a nice blog post about how they collaborate with GNOME to make both EndlessOS and the whole upstream project better. It's an interesting look at how companies can work together and initiate changes in upstream projects instead of going at it alone. EndlessOS uses GNOME, and they were part of the big GNOME 40 redesign, sponsoring the GNOME Foundation to start user testing and define how best to improve GNOME Shell. They also helped redesigning GNOME software for GNOME 41, collaborating with Purism and Red Hat as well in the process. It seems they also sponsor some other projects, like bringing verified applications to FlatHub, integrating web apps in GNOME software, and more. It's always super interesting to me to get these insights into how communities and companies can work together to make products better for everyone. It's just nice to see. Epiphany, or GNOME Web as it's also called, now has support for web extensions. This standard is used by a lot of Chrome, Firefox, and Safari browser extensions, and should help make Epiphany a way more interesting browser for a lot of people. Starting with version 43 at least, with plans to expand support to more and more extensions over time. They are modeling their behavior after Firefox's Manifest v2 API, and they support a host of APIs already. Alarms, cookies, downloads, menus, notifications, storage, tabs, and windows. Web request isn't yet supported, so most content blocking extensions shouldn't work just yet, like uBlock Origin or Privacy Badger. That support is planned, but it requires changes to WebKit GTK first, so it might take a bit more time. This extension support is already available in Epiphany 43 Alpha, and extensions can be installed by downloading them from Mozilla's website and opening them from the new extension item in Epiphany's menu. Really cool stuff, even though it's obviously early days. Now, Epiphany or GNOME Web has already improved its performance and its website compatibility in the past few months, and so with support for extensions, it might finally make it into a real daily browser for mostly everybody, which is nice. I'll give it a shot when it's released as version 43. Google faces yet another antitrust complaint in the EU for yet another one of its services. A job search portal in Denmark has filed that complaint, accusing Google of stifling competition and undermining labor markets through its Google for Jobs service. This service was already being probed by the EU since 2019, as they had received letters from 23 job search services complaining about the exact same thing. The plaintiffs accuse Google of abusing its market dominance in search to push Google for Jobs in the search results instead of other results. And the latest complaint alleges that they've lost 20% of their search traffic since Google for Jobs launched. And they also say that Google service is inferior and thus results in hiding more relevant job offers from the search results. Google answered recently saying that they're happy to partner with any job offer provider to add their offers to Google for Jobs, which would fix part of the complaint, but is definitely not as interesting as getting traffic onto your own website directly, which is what a search engine is for. Now, by now, you're probably all familiar with my own position on Google's blatant abuse of its dominant position in virtually every market it enters, and the job market is virtually no different either. But yeah, they'll probably just get a Fine, that seems huge, but for Google it's just a mosquito bite, they'll pay it and they'll shrug it off and they'll keep doing what they do because that's how it's been for forever. And let's conclude this with some big Steam Deck news. First, people who are still waiting for their devices are probably going to get them quite fast now, as Valve announced they'll be shipping double the number of decks each week than they previously did, as production finally ramps up. People in the Q3 gang should now be relatively close to getting their hands on deck. The deck also got a client update, mostly for bug fixing, as the experience had degraded somewhat after the last few updates. So this new one fixes issues with navigation, controller configurations failing to load, or with the touchscreen being stuck in mouse emulation mode. And the deck passed another milestone, 3,600 games now certified to be playable, this time including Assassin's Creed Director's Cut Edition, Lego Batman, Quake 4, Imperator Rome, and a lot more. I've been gaming more and more on my Steam Deck, and my Xbox One and my main powerful PC that I use to game and edit videos, both of these are just gathering dust now. They're just something more personal to playing these games on the Steam Deck, even though its performance isn't amazing, at mostly 30 FPS for most AAA titles. What is amazing though is today's sponsor, Tuxedo. Tuxedo makes laptops and desktops that run Linux out of the box. You can choose between a huge selection of popular distributions, or you can just buy a device and install your very own and get access to all the software configurations needed from Tuxedo's repositories, which is really cool. They're based in Germany, but they ship worldwide with a huge range of keyboard layouts, and they have configuration options for virtually every device in their huge lineup, from the smallest Ultrabooks to the biggest gaming laptops and gaming PCs like the Stellaris 15 I just bought from them. Whether you just need a new device that you want to run Linux on, or you want to help support Linux development, or you just want to make sure that what you buy is absolutely compatible with Linux, head over to the link in the description and just click it and get yourself a Tuxedo device. They're really good. So, thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, to write a comment, and if you didn't like it, well, dislike it, and tell me why in the comments as well. And if you don't think I'm a lazy bastard and you want to help support the videos that I make, you can click on the super thanks button below the video, or you can click on the PayPal link in the description, or if you want to be a monthly donator, you can join my Patreon subscribers or YouTube members and get access to a weekly Patreon cast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So thanks everyone for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!